Hey, what's up, Exit the Matrix family? Bob here. Hope you're having a great day. Hey guys, this morning I wanted to continue on, let's call this part 3 of, who really controls this realm, who runs this world, whatever you want to say. I've been taking this back to the roots, the beginning, the Genesis story, because that gives us major clues into who the powers are behind this realm at the present time. It gives us clues as to who are the energy vampires, essentially the archonic powers behind the scenes, as to who's pushing for all the conflicts going on around this realm, who runs the banking system, the currency, which is a type of energy exchange. That's why they call money currency. It ebbs and flows. Who controls the militaries of this realm. And we're going to dig a little bit into the signs that help you distinguish who these powers are. And as you know, we've been breaking this down, and I've been bringing it back to the Anunnaki, the Shining Ones, the Elohim, that were present at the hybridization of mankind 200,000 years ago, who used humans as a way to build their city-states, to bring them to harvest, to raise, to harvest food for them, for the gods. And like I always say, folks, when I say gods, I mean little g gods. These were not gods. They wore clothing just like you and me. They had to eat. They had to drink. They were just more technologically advanced humanoids than we are. And they had a hand in the creation of humankind, of the Homo sapien. Now, like I've always said, they were not the creators of all. They were not the big G God, but they masqueraded as gods. Once they'd hybridized this working class slave race, they figured out that having this race worship them as gods gave them extra power. Because, see, the Anunnaki understand how to manipulate the quantum field. And they understood that these Adamites had the ability to interface in with the quantum field, because to give life to these human beings, they had to have a spirit inhabit the avatar, the human body. And so those were fractals of source, sparks of source, whatever you want to call it, conscious energy, and that conscious energy directly interfaces in with the quantum field. However, when conscious energy comes into this realm, for some reason, I don't know if it's the rules of this realm, this game, this matrix, whatever you want to call it, but you are born not knowing where you came from and what you are and who you are. So, but they knew all this. They had all this information. They understood what this realm was, so they could manipulate mankind. So we were like a double-edged sword to them. We were this worker race that they loved to have us do all of their manual labor and to raise the animals and the agriculture, to feed them, to worship them as gods. And when humans worship these deities, these little g gods, by name, they were interfacing in with the quantum field, and they were energizing these beings. They were giving them extra powers, energetic powers I'm speaking of. And because I said we were a double-edged sword to them, that was the good things they got from humanity, but they feared us. They feared us also because we could procreate quicker than they could. We could overcome them just in population alone. They were a very long-lived race, but because of those long lifespans, it took them longer to become, I guess, what you would call adults. And they feared us also because they had created this human being that could be as intelligent, if not more intelligent than them, if we figured out how to completely come into our power, interfacing in with the quantum field, that we would have godlike powers like them, that we could tap into the Akashic records, into all the knowledge of the universe like they could. And they feared this because they understood once we figured this out, their game was over. Because we would have the intellect to match theirs. We would have the spiritual abilities to match their powers. And we would no longer give our power to them. So they had to build a very well-designed matrix around us. A control matrix. A manipulation matrix. They had to build the 3 pillars of civilization that held their control over us. Like I've mentioned before, government, religion, and entertainment. And monetary. Entertainment kind of goes in with government and with religion. However, the monetary policy was very smart on their behalf because they figured out a way to get us to exchange our energy, our labor, our investment into the quantum field for a token. And then you use these tokens to buy other goods that you needed to survive in this realm. So they had built a system, essentially the day that you were born on Earth, that you were in a currency, a debt slavery, that your currency was being farmed like a battery. That you would trade your labor for something worth less than your labor and your energy. And you would always be on a hamster wheel, just trying to survive. Now, there were a few humans that were their connections to humanity, their puppets, their hand-picked, how should I say this? They're emissaries to humankind. And of course, these were the priest class. If you even read in the Old Testament, it talks about how the Hebrews, they would have to go to the priests that were in their set up temples, which when they were coming out of Egypt, these were giant, like, tents structures that they had built. And that, you would go to the front part before the altar and you would leave sacrifices and such for Yahweh. And these priest class, they would take all this stuff through the veil into the back rooms of this tent or this temple. Well, folks, the priest class was taking this food and they were putting it in their storerooms. They were pimping you, just like they do now. They were taking your labor and using it for themselves. Oh yeah, they put on a good front saying, oh, we don't make money, we don't labor, so we only survive off of your givings, your offerings. We only get a small portion, the rest is God's. Now, there was a time when these Anunnaki were physically residing in these temples, and you find that in the stories of the Anunnaki in Sumer, in ancient Akkad, where these gods and goddesses literally took up residence in their temples, and you would usually have each city-state would be dedicated to one of the Anunnaki of the royal bloodline I'm speaking of. And of course, you would have like a temple to Enlil, who you would know as Yahweh in the Old Testament, or you would have a temple dedicated to Enki, who you would know as the serpent in the Garden of Eden, and also you would know him as Yahweh in the Old Testament. And this, folks, is because the Judeans took Enlil and Enki and they balled that god up into one persona. And that explains a lot of why there's like this schizophrenic personality about this Old Testament God. How on one hand he can be benevolent, he can be caring, he can be protective and just, and other times he can do great evils and order the destruction of other city-states and other tribes and peoples, and complete wholesale dismissal of those people. And you understand why I'm saying dismissal, right? You get it, right? I can't use certain words. It is what it is, folks. We try to do this the best we can, working around the censorship. And that God was a jealous God. And he even says, I create good and I create evil. So, these city-states, they were dedicated to these gods. Inanna, Ishtar, had her own city-states, where her temple was the main temple, and she resided in those temples. It even speaks about in the Epic of Gilgamesh how she was known to consummate marriages. Yes, she did. There was a time where the top marriages that were happening in her city-state would have to go to get consummated at her temple. Now, this is the weird thing. She was the one who would sleep with the male, with the human. But she was a goddess. She was an Anunnaki. And this is talked about by Gilgamesh himself. And then it was known that if she didn't like the person, she would kill him. Kind of like a Black Widow. She was a real wild gal, you could say. She was extremely beautiful, and she beguiled mankind. And she slept with humans. She was an Anunnaki, though. And Gilgamesh knew what she did. That's why when she lavished Gilgamesh with praise, and she was basically begging Gilgamesh to marry her, to sleep with her, he denied her, and that infuriated her, because how could this human, this half-human, actually he was 2/3 Anunnaki and 1/3 human, this demigod, this man of renown, this giant of a man, how could he deny her, the beautiful Inanna? And so she went to her father, who is Enlil, Yahweh, and complained about him, and cried about it, and carried on like a spoiled brat, to send the bowl of heaven to attack Gilgamesh's city, Uruk, which is Iraq nowadays. Now these Anunnaki, They had human personalities, folks. And this is simple because we are them. They are us. You know, I'm not denying that there aren't grays. I tend to see the grays, the small aliens, as being like genetically cloned robotic entities. I see them as being non-soul creatures, that they were also designed by these Anunnaki, that they were like their, like, you know, organic robotic beings that they used to carry out different tasks and stuff. But the Anunnaki look like us. Now, they might have been taller than us, stronger, and had more spiritual powers than we did. And all this was because they've had to control that in us. But they were tapped into the knowledge of the universe. They knew all this. They came here with their knowledge, with their spiritual abilities. So I hope I'm weaving a tapestry here that's beginning to make sense to you. You have to understand, folks, that your religions are all based on these ancient cuneiform tablets. These beings still manipulate us, however, to this day. They control us from behind the scenes. And they are still warring with each other over control of Earth. Because they're human-like us. They're greedy. They are vain. They are weak and strong. They can do good and evil. They can be a helper to man, or they can be a hindrance to man. And even within the families, there's division and striving going on. You see this with even Enki's family, the feathered serpent family. You have the two main brothers under Enki that are warring with each other. You have the brother Marduk, who is also known as Ra and Baal in the Bible, and his other son, Ningazida, who is known as Thoth. Ningazida is depicted as the Caduceus in ancient depictions of Ningazida. He's the feathered serpent. He's depicted as a snake coiled around an iron rod with the crown chakra and the wings. And we're going to do a Caduceus breakdown, folks, because it's very important. Now, this character, Ningazida, is known as Thoth, who's known as Hermes Trismegistus, who's also known as Mercury. This god was called the messenger of the gods, the scribe of the gods. Well, he was actually trying to help humanity. He was trying to bring knowledge and wisdom to humanity. He was trying to wake humanity up to the fact that we are creator beings, that we are essentially gods also, that we are fractals of source. And if you read the Emerald Tablets, this will explain this very, very plainly. Now, I'm not going to get into the arguments about the Emerald Tablets. Are they real or not? Or at least are they really as ancient as they say? Are they really from Thoth, from Hermes? Folks, just read the Emerald Tablets and you will find the absolute total breakdown of the quantum field in the Emerald Tablets. And the whole time in the Emerald Tablets, Thoth is trying to wake you up. He's trying to teach you how to astral project. He's trying to teach you how to come into your spiritual abilities. He's trying to wake you up. The whole Emerald Tablets is all about waking you up. He's trying to help humanity. Now, I get it. Many theologians would say that he's a demon and he's just tricking man and all that. Folks, you got to understand, even if so-called Doriel, who translated the Emerald Tablets, who published it, when that was published, we didn't have this understanding of quantum physics like we are beginning to figure out now. This was all explained a long time ago. I think the Doriel, God, I'll have to get the exact date for you guys sometime, but let's just say it was a good 60 plus years ago that was published. So there's wars between these gods, and you'll see that war between the two brothers, Ra, Marduk, and Ningishzida Thoth in the Egyptian stories of the pre-pharaonic gods ruling Egypt. You'll see that Thoth ruled Egypt for like 30,000 plus years, and you'll see his brother Ra took over Egypt. And for those of you that have followed the Akhenaten story, you'll start to figure out that winged disc god, that sun god, that Akhenaten claimed was the only god, him and his followers, that was Marduk, Ra, that they were worshiping. And Marduk, Ra, was trying to usurp the other gods, the other Anunnaki. And this is found also in the Babylonian cuneiform, because Babylon came much later after Sumeria and Akkad. Originally, in the Enuma Elish, Enki was the hero of the story. But later on, the Babylonians changed it to Marduk. Marduk usurped his own father in that amazing story that is known as the Enuma Elish, which is also a story about cosmic changes in our solar system. That's about a war amongst the gods in the heavens, amongst the planets. And we know this, folks. There's the asteroid belt. They called it the hammered bracelet. There was destruction on a cosmic level in our own solar system at one time. There was at least one planet destroyed or partially destroyed. Our planet in the Enuma Elish was called Tiamat. It was much bigger than it is now. Earth is the healed portion left over of Tiamat. And this is all in the Enuma Elish. But the Babylonians made Marduk the hero of that story. And it's interesting to note that Marduk is tied to Mars. He's a god of war. See, folks, the ancients were trying to encode all this information for us. They were trying to explain all this to us in a way that we could understand it. But a lot of this was encoded for future generations that would have the technological means to decode all this stuff and figure it out. Göbekli Tepe was also they're starting to say now that it was some kind of a astrological like warning system, that they were encoding a warning about worldwide cataclysm and such. And they buried Göbekli Tepe. And Göbekli Tepe now is being dated back to as far back as 11,000 years. Possibly older. Something happened, folks. There was some kind of war that happened between these gods on Earth. And possibly this war was on a planetary level also. And you need to read the Enuma Elish. It is kind of tough to read, but you got to understand that it's all symbols. It's all symbolism about planets and such. At least the first part of it. And you read about this war amongst the gods, this cosmic war that happened. And Marduk usurped Enki in the hierarchy of the Anunnaki at one point. And you've seen this in Egypt and you've seen it in Mesopotamia. And his armies were invading from Egypt, his Hyksos, Akhenaten's Hyksos armies, under the banner of Ra, Marduk, Baal, were invading the lands of his father's rival, Yahweh. And there was this war between these two deities, these two Anunnaki. And we're going to dig further into this, folks, but Marduk is a very important character to figure out who this person is, folks. Marduk led a rebellion of the Igigi against Enlil Yahweh in the Sumerian cuneiform tablets in the Atra Hasis. Marduk is who you would call Lucifer in the Old Testament. He was the angel, the Anunnaki, the Watcher, who led 200 fallen angels from Mars to Earth to rebel against Enlil, Yahweh, over their work conditions on Mars, over the labor that they were doing. They didn't have women. They were angry with Enlil about this work that they were being forced to do. And the Igigi were, once again, understand this, were the working class Anunnaki. The Anuna are the royal class. The Anunnaki are the royal class. I hope I'm making that clear. And this Marduk character, he wanted to become the highest ranking god, the highest ranking Anunnaki on earth. He wanted to usurp Enlil and Enki, his father and his uncle, for rulership of earth. And you'll see his symbols all around the earth. Our world rulers, folks, they give worship and dominance to Ra. One of his major symbols is called Baal's shaft. It's the giant obelisk that you'll find in Egypt and in Greece and all over the world. In almost every capital of the world, there's a giant obelisk, usually at one of the main government buildings in the courtyard. This is called Baal's shaft. Like I said, Ra, Marduk, Baal, and you could say Lucifer is all the same entity. Just different names from different cultures and religions. Now, his another one of his symbols is on our dollar bill. It is that eye of providence, that shining eye, that little capstone of the pyramid that's floating over the pyramid. He was the sun god, folks. That's why it's represented with the sun rays. Because he is the dominant Anunnaki now on Earth. However, there is still a war going on between these two families, the Enlilites and the Enkyites. And you see this between the standards you find on all the flags and family standards around the earth. Whenever you see a flag dominated by a feathered serpent or a dragon, that's the Enkyite family. That's their calling card. Whenever there's one of an eagle, a griffin, or a phoenix, and sometimes a two-headed griffin, and they have different variations of this, that is Enlil, the eagle family. And you'll see on flags all around the world, on standards, on coat of arms, these two symbols. Folks, this is a battle between bloodlines, royal Anunnaki bloodlines. And we are the audience, and we are watching these spectacles take place. These people, they love warfare. They love this control over humanity. They love battling with each other. And I'm at work, folks, so I got to go. I want to go deeper into this. But I left you another addition onto this story, who, really controls this realm, who rules it. Now, it's a lot to take in, I get. But I hope I'm starting to connect some dots for you. Remember, Baal's shaft. Look it up. You'll find it all around. It's in almost every capital of the world. And you'll see that eye on the dollar bill. That is the eye of Ra. That is Marduk. That is the Shining One. He is this God that puts himself over all the others. He was this God that was defacing the other gods' faces in Egypt. He was the God that usurped the old Egyptian gods. And he was the God that usurped the Sumerian gods. And like I said, look it up, the Enuma Elish, the old original Sumerian version, and look at the very similar Babylonian version, and you'll see the biggest change was Enki was swapped out for Marduk. Marduk was made the hero. Now, I just want you guys to understand, like I've always said, when I talk about these gods, I call them gods and deities because that is what they are known as throughout our society for for thousands of years. These are the ones that people worship. And we will get into how these actually are worshipped in our modern religions too, because it's all connects back, folks. All back to the beginning. That's why I keep telling everybody, you've got to learn about the beginning, the genesis of human creation, because that's where all of the breadcrumbs are, folks. And it explains this realm, why this realm is so jacked up too, and why we are how we are, because we were made to be like them. They made us to be like their culture. These are not divine gods. These are not nice, great people. They are just like us. Some of them are good and some are bad. Some are evil, some are beneficial. And they're jealous, they're warlike, they're lustful. All the same things, all of the same weaknesses humankind has, folks, because we are them and they're us, okay? So anyways, hey, I appreciate you guys, and I'll talk to you later.